Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Test Automation 101, iOS Mobile App Testing with Ranorex Studio. I'm John Reynolds, Product Manager at Ranorex, and I will be the moderator for today's session. With me is Timothy McDaniel, a Ranorex pre-sales engineer who will be handling the demonstration portion of our webinar. Before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping announcements to make. All attendees will be kept on mute throughout the webinar. Our team will be answering any questions raised through the questions area of the GoToWebinar chat console. This webinar is also being recorded, so any attendees who may have to leave early will still receive a link to the recording of the webinar after the webinar is finished. You can expect that recording link within about 48 hours after the session ends. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Timothy so he can cover the agenda and the demonstration.
Thank you, John. Today's agenda is going to be preparing your mobile device, how to set it up and everything. You've got to connect and register the mobile device with the Ranorex Studio, how to go about that, instrumenting and deploying your mobile application under test, creating your test solution using the Rocket Start Solution Wizard, an intro to create a mobile test, and introduction to how the validation works, how it looks like if it fails, and run a mobile test and interpret the test report, and other numerous valuable tips and tricks for mobile testing along the way. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I have like a little emulator here that we will be using. So it's not an emulator, I'm sorry, it's mirroring actually an iPad that I have hooked up to the screen. So let me go ahead and put this back over here for now while we take a look first at Ranorex and how we're going to go about instrumenting it. So when you first open up the Ranorex Studio, you will see that there is a little news page here that has blog entries and also articles related to UI testing. It lets you know when there are upcoming webinars, and there's usually one every month. They're free to attend, and if you can't attend, as long as you register, you will get a link to the on-demand webinar afterwards. We also provide updates on as far as if there's going to be a new update or something, you would definitely, that would be the top level of information here. We've got some sample solutions that you can use. And then to start off, we also have the new the way to get started with like new solution via wizard, a new blank solution, or you can open an existing solution that you might be needing, that you've already listed. Your recent solutions, your most recent solutions, just like most other applications and things, you get a list of those that you've opened recently. The first thing that we're going to do here is click on New Solution via Wizard. And when we come to this screen, it's prompting you, what do you want to test? Either a desktop application, a web application, mobile, and today we are going to look at mobile. And we're going to give this test a name. We'll call it, just make up one here real quick, right? iOS app test. There you go. And you can come up with whichever name you want. And then it's asking you, well, what do you want to test? Do you want to test an iOS app? Or do you want to test an Android app, or a web test on iOS, or a web test on Android? For today's webinar, we're going to do iOS. So I'm going to click on that one and say continue. And it's giving me some prerequisites, and these are important. iTunes on this machine, including the USB driver, download iTunes, and I already have iTunes installed. It's a free download that you can put on your Windows machine. And we don't really use iTunes, so to speak, as far as, maybe some of you do, but it just needs to be installed because there's some required drivers and files that are utilized. There's a USB to Lightning cable, which connected to a mobile device. That's how we've got ours connected. And you need, of course, a compatible mobile iOS device running iOS. Right now, I think it needs to be a pretty recent version that's supported by Apple. For example, if you are using something as old as like iOS version 6, which is something that I've actually tried to test, and it did not work because it's pretty, I guess you say, legacy type of iOS system. You can't use that. Also, too, right now, iOS 15, as of today, 10/21, is not supported on, but the developers are working on coming up with a solution to do that. The iOS 15 came out, they created some different measures and ways of doing things, and so the Ranorex developers are working on a solution to have that working. So if you are trying to test with iOS 15 and it's failing, try testing on a device that's using iOS 14 or lower, not too low, but lower, and it should be successful. So I just wanted to point that out. That way, if you, after this webinar, you're trying to do testing and things aren't working right, that could be your culprit. But hopefully that will soon be rectified. And finally, you also need the IPA file, your mobile app IPA file. You need your mobile provision file and your certificate, your P12 file. I have 3 files here that I will be using for our demonstration purposes. It's just like KeyPass, I think is a KeyPass mini application. And it's actually already instrumented. So I'm really, in a sense, going to be just re-signing and redeploying it to the iPad. Once it's been instrumented, you really don't need to instrument it again. And do take note that you cannot instrument applications that you download from the App Store, or when it comes to Android, with the Androids from the Android Google Play Store when it relates to APK files. But we're talking about iOS today. Just something to note. And when you are redeploying it to the App Store, you cannot have an instrumented version of it that you're going to put up there. It would not be accepted by Apple in their App Store if it's instrumented. Now, for test purposes too, this mini file from our website, you can actually download the sample file from our website and test it out. It's already instrumented. That one can be directly downloaded onto your device, and you can go ahead and recreate those scenarios without trying to go through this process that I'm about to show you. So the next thing, we click continue, and it kind of gives you a summary of what's going to happen, and that it's going to launch the solution into the Ranorex Studio for the working environment, and advice about, if you get stuck, look at the user guide for more help. And there's a lot of information in there. Let's say finish. So now we've sort of got this little platform here. I can kind of resize it right now, make it a little bigger for now. And we can see that it kind of set up an iOS app test and a test suite. The one thing that we do need to do is we need to establish an endpoint. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on this endpoints. And we can see what's here, no endpoint added. So we're going to add an endpoint. Say add endpoint. And here it's asking, do you want for Android, iOS, a WebDriver? We're choosing iOS. There is a QR code that you can install the RX Service app on your mobile device by going to this, by scanning this QR code. It'll take you directly to the site. You can also, we can also instrument it using the instrumentation wizard, which we'll do in a second. And then it says, okay, do we want to select iOS device, iPad? And we can add this endpoint here. Endpoint successfully added. And we can say complete setup. So we've got this going here. I'm going to actually set this as the automation route. And I'm going to come up here and go to the instrumentation wizard again. When we go to the instrumentation wizard, I'm going to say instrument a mobile device. We'll say next. And we will go iOS. That's what we're instrumenting. Checking prerequisites. Auto detecting, we'll go new. We're going to choose from here. And then we're going to say next. And if I had not added the endpoint, then you also have a choice here of adding that endpoint, which will essentially open this up so you can add it. But we've already done that. So we can say next. Now, before we do the IPA file and the provisioning file and the P12 file that I was mentioning, we're going to go ahead and update the service. So we're going to, just to make sure, I've got it on here, but we're going to make sure we've got the latest. If you don't have it at all on here, then you could definitely install that on here. And we're going to say finish. And it's going through and deploying it. And operation was successful, and we will say finish. And that is done. Now, one thing you will note is I'm connected via a tethered USB, basically using a lightning cable. That is really the more recommended way to do it, even though you do have the capability under here on iOS, and you can see from our website here, you can create tests with both, you can run tests even if it's on Wi-Fi, you can start and stop the application. However, you do lose the functionality of installing an IPA or doing an unattended deployment here. So there are some benefits in regards to using the USB tethering method instead. So let me move this out of the way. And now what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and deploy this IPA. So we're going to say instrument and deploy app. Kind of prompts the wizard again to come up. And we're going to say instrument and mobile device again. It's go next here. We're just going to choose it from our list. That's much quicker here. And we will say next. And now we come to this list where we're going to add the IPA and do all of those things. And in this instance, we're going to browse to the folder where I have these particular files. I put them on my C drive. And where did I put this here? iOS app. There you go. So we have the IPA file here. We go over here. We also have add provisioning file. So we're going to go into this mobile provisioning file. And finally, this certificate for the application. A little bit different than the Android. Android, you basically click on the APK file and you can instrument that. It's not as many settings to deal with. And there's also the P12 password, which let me get that. Okay, let me just paste this password in here. And also too, let's look under these manually configure sign. So resign only, skip deployment, and skip instrumentation. So we can basically change this to say resign only, and then it will go through there. And we can say skip the instrumentation. And basically we're resigning and we're skipping deployment of this application. So let's go ahead and say OK. And say next. And right now it's instrumenting, and it said it was successful. That's great. That was very quick. I could imagine if we were re-instrumenting, and especially depending on the application size, it might take more time to do so, to going through the instrumentation process. But since we're not really re-instrumenting an already instrumented application, then it went rather quickly. So we're going to say finish, and that particular app is instrumented. So now let's pull up this iPad here. Maybe right now for a moment we can make it a little bit larger. It's more visible. And here we can see that it added the mini KeyPass. One thing that you want to do is you do want to click on it the first time after you need to open it. And the reason to do so is that's enables it to make sure that it is picked up by the Ranorex service application. So the Ranorex service application, if we look at our apps, we can see that the mini KeyPass is listed along with the Ranorex browser. If you're doing any web testing, mobile web testing, you do have to use the Ranorex browser because it's instrumented. We're not able to instrument, because of being proprietary and stuff. There's no way to instrument Safari and things like that. So Ranorex browser would be your browser of choice if you're doing web testing using the Ranorex tool. So we have basically those listed. Another thing that's good to do is to go into the settings. This is one thing you want to make sure that you do as well. And we want to go to, and got some suggestions. One of them, of course, is to update to the latest version. And we don't want to do that because, like I said, at the moment, using Ranorex, we want to stay. Right now we're at 14.8. And if we go to the, where is it, general? Nope, it is screen time. It's general. Display and brightness, that's what I was looking for. So you go to display and brightness, and what you want to do is you want to turn probably this auto lock to never right now so that you're not having to worry about the screen shutting off constantly on you. And then we can get out of there, and we are back to this screen here, and we can prepare to go ahead and create our test here. So we're going to go ahead and minimize this again. Actually, I'll move it off for a little bit to clear the screen and get a little bit more screen real estate. So if we click the record button here, now you've noticed here we got, it's asking me, do I want to perform a web test? Maybe at a specific website. So, but we are going to use the mini KeyPass. We're going to hit create. And at this point, it's attempting to launch the application on the iPad. And we should see something pop up here. There you go. And if we sit there and look here, it's actually opened the application. If we zoom in here, it is what we see on the screen. Let me kind of show you that now. Let's bring this over here so you can see. And it's basically seeing what's inside the different items. And so we are now ready to actually create our simple test that, for this particular webinar. Okay, so in light of that we're going to be doing this, let me just quickly go over a few points with Ranorex itself. So Ranorex, this pretty much relates to whether you were doing desktop testing, web testing, or mobile testing. You have your projects file explorer over here where you have all your items and all the files that relate to it. You also have your module browser showing the different recordings that you're using. It automatically, using the wizard, created this default recording here. And in turn, we have this actions panel where we're going to create all our actions. And down here below is your repository. So as we start adding elements, these elements from the application, like the buttons and the forms and clicking, those repository items populate here. And of course, then we use those linked repository items with our actions that we have here. We have different actions here, and you can see these different touch, swipe gesture, mobile key press, validation, invoke action, get value, set value, all of those things. And then of course we have your test suite and your different test cases. So we can even create multiple test cases, different scenarios or things that we are trying to test with this application to make sure that everything is running properly with it. So that is pretty much the default, that this is whether you're creating mobile tests or with any other type of application, this is where you would see the suite and what's going on. And then of course the output will let you know, did it compile and build successfully the test, executable, were there any errors or problems like that? So just wanted to briefly go over that before we actually start recording our test. So first, let's take a look at what we're going to do for our test here. Good thing is to kind of go through a dry run just to say what we're going to do. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a database, and we're going to just call this new database, we'll call it password database. Password DB, okay? And then we will go type in a password. We will say, I don't know, something simple, something I wouldn't recommend if this were for real, but you can, it's funny, this reflector program is not showing this part on the screen, and I think that must be by design. There, so we've created this password database file, and then we can say, done, and we've got this password list. Afterwards, we're going to go into this, and we're going to type in the password. And like I said, this program doesn't show me putting in a password, and I think that's for security reasons, but it worked. We logged in here. And now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new group, and we would just call this group passwords. So we're going to passwords. Let's see. Say done, and it doesn't look like there, but if you go back, there you go. It says passwords. We'll go into this passwords and add really quick an entry. And we'll put a title like email, password, or email account. Let's say email account. And so you go down to username, type in like jdoe, type in the password. Well, this one it lets you see it. But just do know that this is not probably an ideal password for anybody to really use in real life, right? Let's go ahead and say done. And then we can basically sit back out to the main database here. So this is pretty much the dry run that we're going to do on this test. And the next step is to start recording these actual things. So to get started though, we're going to actually delete this so we can start this from scratch, because we want to do this and record the element actions. Delete, and that's it here. Let's get started. Okay, so what we need to do is go ahead and go into Ranorex Spy. For basically when you're doing your recording elements, everything is handled through the Ranorex Spy here. You can see, like we said before, this is the app. And so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and add the plus button and create an action to touch on that button. So we expand this, we go down here, and there's actually this button add. That's the button we need. So we're going to take this. Now there's different ways to do this. We could right click and then just add this to the repository. And if you do that, it will put it into the repository. We could also drag it to the actions table or drag it to the repository. Right now we'll just say add to the repository. And now you see this is in the repository in the path of where it located it. And we're going to drag this button up and we're going to say touch. Okay, and now let's bring back up the Spy tool for a second. And with this button, we can basically press it. And actually, let me bring over the iPad so we can see. And one thing you will notice is when you highlight different things, just like if you were doing recording in the browser, you can see where it's highlighting different things, or a desktop application, right? It's very similar to when you're recording something there. So what we can do is go onto this button though, and we can right click on it and say touch tap. And when you do that, it actually is bringing up the, well, that's button gear. It's not what we wanted. Let me, I think done. We're trying to do this one. Actually, what we wanted was the button add. That's what we wanted. And we touch tap that one. And now what we have, and of course we've already recorded that action, right? So touch tap is in there. And from here we can go ahead and begin typing in the name field. I'm going to refresh this screen here. And let's see if we can find out where this name is. It's like really not, sometimes hunting to where they actually stored different elements is a challenge. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to identify this field. So if we zoom in on here and we click on this name field, there, it's text name is what we need. So we can add this to the repository. And we can go ahead and say that we want to touch on this. Actually, we're going to set a value, so we don't need to touch on it. We just say text, set value. Text here, I think we called it KeyPass database or password database. Password database. And so we've got three actions now that three actions. Run the mobile app. Click on to add and add the text name password database. And let's go back over into the spy tool. And next thing we need is the password field. So the best thing to do is to go ahead and just kind of, if you click on the outside, it will go up a field. And so we're back in our table. So what we want is this password one. So that took us really quick to the password field, and what we can do is go ahead, add this to it, add this to the repository, and let's just go back real quick and see if we can go up for the confirmation password, because that's the other one. Let's zoom in here, confirm password, and we can add this one to the repository as well. And like I said too, we could take this and just drag it in here like this as well. So that's the other way to do it. So we've got to add a button. Let's go ahead and put password up here, and we'll say set the value for text. Go and type in password 123 exclamation. And like I said, this is of course not a good password at all. It's exactly an example of what not to use as a password. But for a simple demo here that we're just creating for this scenario, it will do, and make sure it's easy to remember for us for the moment. And we need to confirm that again. So we're going to do the same thing. And we'll say set value text. Oops. Set value text. And do the same thing. Password 123 pound. Now, if I really had a good password and I wanted to mask this, one thing that you can do is you can go to properties of this, and I could say mask. That way, no one could ever figure out what my password is. There we go. So we basically sort of mask that, and that would be masked in the report as well. So finally we go back over here, and let's just do a refresh, make sure we got everything. Go back out, click on the out field. Let me bring up the device too so you can see it. There you go. And we're going to go back up here, and we really just want to click on this done element here. So we need to click on the done. Now, sometimes you're trying to find exactly like, how do I get to that done button, right? Because you go over here and you click on done, and look at that. It's covering, something's covering the entire, it's covering that button so that you can't really get to it. So that's when you've got to kind of look through here and see, and we see right here, this is the done button. And that is what we need, so we're going to go ahead and add this to the repository as well. And let's take this up, drag it up. This time we're going to do a touch. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to run this local recording just so we can see if it works so far. And also too, because it will fill in the data that we need so that we can continue to the next part of this. So whenever you're running the recording, just here locally, you're running just this recording. If you are running from here, like here, or from up there, then you're running actually the entire test. But of course, right now, we haven't broken up this test in any sort of module or anything like this. So pretty much everything is sort of contained. Remember here, we can say to go from different items. We're not going to do run mobile app since we've already got the app open. What we're going to do is go ahead and continue the rest of these. We can say run from here in order to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead right now and just run this and see what happens. So run from here, and it's executing. Let's bring this over here so we can kind of see what's going on, right? Go to finish successfully. Okay, now it's running, it's going up, putting the password in. Oh, that already did it real quick and added it. So it shows here that that was successful, and it set the attribute password database. Then it typed in the Windows pass or the password for that database file, and it confirmed it. And then after that, it clicked done at the center. Okay, let's go back over to the recording. Actually, we're going to go back into Spy Tool, and we see here where we've got the different items here. So what we want to do is basically get onto this form here, the cell password tab here. We can drag and drop that over here, say touch. And what would be good right now is to see if we can, well, do we have the reflector? Let's pause. Okay, actually it's right over here. Let's bring this back up for a second. So we just want this to click on it. We're going to actually run this selected item only. Let me Alt-tab that back up real quick while it runs, just so we can see it in action. Very simple. It clicked it, it was successful, and it brought up the field to add our to log into this. And we're going to go back to the recording. Let's go down. Let's go back into Spy. Maybe do a refresh here, and we can see. Let me see mobile device. Mobile device. There you go. Now we can see the other screen coming up here. And we know this here's, we got a password field. Let's click on this, text password, that's what we need. So that is going to be added to the repository here. And it's actually linked to the same password. It's just using the same element that we had earlier for entering the password early on. So it's basically using that same element feature. So let's go ahead and drag this up and put in here that we want to set a value. Actually, before we do that, you might, there's a better way to do that. Since it's the same thing for that password, we can actually copy this and paste that down here. And you've got another set value here. So for logging into it. So now we just need to click on that done button to complete that action. So let me quickly go over here, go back into Spy, And we see here this container here. Actually, we can make this a little bigger and see it, maybe more, make it more sizable. But we need to click on this Done button up here. Of course, sometimes getting to what you want to get in there is a little tricky, isn't it? So we need to go ahead and expand. That's the cancel. There's the Done button. This container here, Done. And let's go ahead and add this to the repository. It's right here. We're going to go ahead and click on, bring this up and say that we want to touch that. And then we will go ahead and let me see, where is, let's go ahead and bring this up again. Let me put it to the side of the screen and drag it back because then it's easier to get back. And we're going to go ahead and see if we can run from here and see if that will take care of logging into this little database. And that worked, so we've got this step complete as well. From here, we're going to go ahead and add a, we're going to add the new group for passwords. So let me go ahead and bring the File Explorer up again. Not File Explorer, the spy tool. And then we are going to refresh this item so we can kind of see what we've got here. Now we're dealing with a new screen again. And we're going to find, click on the plus sign again in order to get to the plus symbol to add that as well. And we click on here, and here we go. We have this add right here. So we'll go ahead and add this element to our repository here. And we can sit there and put it up here and say touch. And I'm just going to run this selected item in order to get this to come up to the next portion. There you go, and that's prompting me to add a group. Now, of course, I could go ahead and I could manually click this button to bring up the elements and doing it, one by one. I could go ahead and just click on add group, and then go ahead and start working with that just like this. But this way I can make sure that I'm advancing this along as I'm capturing these elements. But it may be preferable to capture a lot of elements and then, put it all together. But to make sure it's working, this is just stepping through. Let's go ahead and, actually we need to get rid of this one. I have to edit it here because I got ahead of myself here. Delete one, there we go. And let's go ahead and go to the next step, which this is where we were. So now I can just go back to the other screen and to the spy tool, do a refresh here so I can see. There you go. And we see that this is the element that we need. So we're going to go ahead and say that we want to I need to put this over into the recording. And drag this up and go ahead and touch. We'll go ahead and run the selected item. And it was successful. Let me see if we can get this on the screen for you. And it's showing, prompted me to put in a new group. So we're going to capture the element for this new group field. Let's go over into The Ranorex Spy, we can see this here. All right, we can see that this is what we need. We're going to go ahead and drag this over here. And then we're going to pull this up, and this will be a set value. And we're going to set the value of text. And let's set the value of text to, what do we want to call this? We want to call this passwords. Password list. There you go. Password list or something like that. So we'll go ahead and hit enter there. And what we will do right now, just to continue advancing, I'm going to go ahead and just, without testing it right now, we'll just go ahead and type this in. We'll test it later after we go through this password list. Okay, and then of course we need to do this done portion right here as well. So let's go ahead and go back to Ranorex Spy. Move this off the list here. Let's see. And we're going to look for this button done on this screen as well. Okay, it's probably under here somewhere. Let's see. Done. Set a group. There you go, the container done. Let's go ahead and drag this over here, and we'll grab that up here and say touch as well. So those two clicks right here, we've got the enter the value text, the password list, and then we hit done. I'm going to hit done here just to get to the next screen here. And you see it says new group, but of course we know when we click back on it, it's kind of weird here. There it now shows password list of what it's supposed to show. And then from there, when we go into the password list, we'll click on the password list that's been created, and we will enter, make a new entry as well. Okay, so I'm going to go in ahead at where we click on that element. Let me go into the spy tool, and we'll do a refresh. You can see here, this is what we need right here. So we just click on this item here, and we can basically go and take this element as well over here and drag this up. And we'll touch here, which will go into the password list. We can see this right here, the password list. And once we click on this password list, we'll go back in here. Then, of course, we've got to do a new entry. So let me go back and bring up this define to a refresh again. And we will go and get to the plus symbol again. So let's go expand this one. We expand these buttons here. Should be able to find the UI view of that one. You see there's a gear here. Share, there's this add button right here, the add container. Let me just go over here, click on this, and drag that up and do a touch. And that should let us add a new entry. I did notice one thing that's going to be a problem, and this is just taking a look at this field right here. We've got this password list, and it's looking for password list. But if you recall, whenever we're looking at the screen, it defaults initially to new group until you enter that. So that's going to get us stuck. So what we need to do, or what I need to do here temporarily, or right now, is go ahead and say, okay, we want new group to be what it's looking for, because otherwise it's going to have trouble finding that element. Oops. Let's see. Okay. So that one should help us to advance and be able to get past that portion. Okay, and after making that correction, let me go back into the Ranorex Spy tool, do a refresh here. We've got here this group entry, and of course what we want is this entry portion right here. And what we need to do is basically come down to, I think that's probably under this pop over region. Yep, that's what we want. And we want actually this entry. So we will take this entry over here, drag it in, and click that we want to touch that entry. Okay. And we will go ahead and run this selected item just to let that do it for us and see if it works real quick. And it's we got to that part as well. And the next part is to go ahead and go back here to the spy tool, and we'll do a refresh just so we can see. And we've got this new entry field here. Click on here, text new entry, and we will take this. Let's go back to the recording. There you go. Add this to the text entry field and set a value. Let's say set value, text, new entry. I think we were going to call this email password. I can spell today. Email account. We'll just call it email account. There you go, and hit enter. And then we need to go back. We'll go ahead and get the rest of these portions before we run it. Let me see. Let's go to Excel. I mean to Spy. All right. Let me zoom in here. Then we got username, text username. Drag this in. And the username field. So we'll drag this up here, put in the username as well, set the value text, and go ahead and type in like JDoe. All right. Quickly go back over here too to the passwords, and let's see if we can just kind of come out of here. There we go. And zoom in here. The password, and then we can sit there and do the same thing, password, and drag up this password here and set a value, text, and we'll say password 123 exclamation, like I said, just for demo purposes. And then we can, and you can opt to mask this as well if you wanted to. There we go, so it's masked here. And let's see. And then we just need to go ahead and click the done button. So let's go ahead and find that button again. Go down here to new entry. So we're kind of in the right category here. Let's look for the done button. See right over here. We're done. Okay, so that's what we wanted. Let's pull this up and do a touch right there as well. Okay, let's go ahead and run this from here. Just we'll run it from this area here and let it enter this information. So let's run, say run from here. Bring this back over here so we can look at it. And that completed successfully, I think. Let's see, success, yep. So we've got that entered as well. Okay, let's go and go to the next part. Now I think what we're going to do here is we're going to do a validation, and the validation will just that this username does equal to John Doe. So in order to do a validation, let's go over to this recording here. We've got this John Doe field here. We're going to actually drag this up here underneath John Doe, and we are going to say that we want to validate. What do we want to validate? We want to validate the attribute is equal to text John Doe, and that way we will know whether or not that occurred or not. So as part of our test. So if we want to just check real quick if that works, we can say run this selected item here. And then of course, once we finish this, we're going to run the whole test, and you will see how this looks when it's all put together. Okay, and it's success, and it does say the attribute text of element for this repository item does match the specified value. So attribute text equals John Doe. So that was successful. And what we can also do is we can add some screenshots. So for example, if we want to see a screenshot of everything that happened here, we can go ahead and take this Ranorex mini KeyPass, the form here, drag this up here, say that we want to capture a screenshot. So, and we can put these screenshots at different intervals, in fact, and that will show up in our report so that we can kind of see kind of like, you know, what's happened. Now, when there's a test failure on the entire test, usually screenshots are automatically provided, but here we can just throw in a screenshot whether it passes or not to ensure that that takes place. Finally, I think the last thing what we want to do is we want to back out, and we're just going to delete the entire database and put it back to how it was at the beginning. So what we're going to do here is look for sort of the back button to go back and do those actions. Okay, back to SPI. Do a refresh here, kind of take a look at what we're seeing here. And of course what we're looking is for this button right here. And we will go ahead and add this to our repository, or we'll just add it directly to here. Touch it. And then when we go back to the password list, I'm going to actually click on this one here on the screen of the iPad, and that's going to take me to a new view, which we'll see in a second. That's password database. So we said password list, now we're going to password database. And we're going to go ahead and drag this in here, or we'll drag it in here, touch it. Okay, and then I'm going to click on password database and take us basically to the password list. And let's do a refresh. Password list, and then of course it brings up files. So we're going to again go click on files, take that one, drag it, touch, and let's go back over here. I'm going to click on files, and that takes us to our password database.kdb file that we created. So let me go ahead and again go back to Explore so we can do a refresh. In fact, we can see here, see you have this password database file. And in this instance, if we can find this again, these text files, no, let's see. So you see expand files, we've got an edit container, edit stack view here. There we go. So we can go ahead and go drag this in here and say touch. Go back here again and do a refresh. We can look at what we need to see here. Actually, I need to go ahead and click it on here. Let's click edit, and then it's going to give me a new view. So let me refresh. There you go. You see this right here. This is the button that we want to click to delete this database. So we'll sit there and say yes, or click on that one, delete. Touch. Okay, and let's see. And when we click on that and do a refresh, there's a delete button over here. So what we want to do is go into this delete button. If we can find this button here, button delete right here. See if we can go into that one. It's not expanding, showing me. Actually right here. So we can drag this over here and say delete. Okay, and that should delete the database. And if we click on that and we refresh, we're back to where we started. Okay. Okay, so let's go back over here now. I'm going to bring the tablet back over here, and we're going to go ahead and run the entire thing and let this see if this test case works. It's compiling. Should be starting soon. Oh, once you have 2 of 2, it's getting there. Let's remove this a little bit more over here so it's not. Okay, so it's creating the database, setting the password. Now it's adding a group to it, and an entry. Typing in our username. I can see over here on the left side that I did do a validation. You can see that in the console window. And it completed successfully. We've got deleted the database, so we're back to square one here. And if you see here, it basically shows you everything that it did. Here's the past validation. Here, right here is the screenshot where it verified, shows a screenshot that where it created this entry. And everything ran successfully. So that concludes the webinar demonstration of this. Just to let you know, you can rename these items here to be able to better identify them. You wouldn't want to change the path unless necessary, like where we did in that one instance. But over here, you can definitely edit these names, make them more reasonable in your repository for categorization. You can also split these modules up into new recording items, move to a new recording module to break it down into more sensible things and, better for reuse in other types of test cases. This does conclude the demonstration part of the webinar, and we thank you for your attention. Okay, thank you again for attending, and if you do have any lingering questions that you'd like an answer to, please reach out to us and we will be happy to answer you. Thanks again for your participation, and you can email us at evaluation@ranorex.com and we'll get back to you. Thank you.